And in a typical kind of hierarchical structure, where there's a lot of command and control and a lot of top-down decision making, you don't get that same level of efficiency on the individual level. So anyway, this is an incredibly impressive thing for me, and I think it's a useful sort of data point for thinking about, like, is it possible to build very large agile groups, and what are the circumstances under which they work? I'm going to talk a little bit more about visionaries and drivers and things like that by just introducing this bullseye model. This has been something that I've ended up thinking about a lot in terms of building social networks, because when you want to understand what kind of data is interesting to someone, it's if you look at your Facebook feed, it's typically things that your friends did, or finding out about some of your friends' friends, and so the online social networks have really adopted models like this of kind of bullseyes, where you as an individual stand at the middle, and then your friends are in the next circle around you. Your friends of friends and groups are around that, and then you can go a little bit further. In practice, I've found that going farther than 2 degrees away from yourself doesn't bring in a lot of valuable additional information. So, from many standpoints, being degree 3 away from something is about as if you were degree infinity away from something. It's only once you start getting in the 2 first degrees of separation from someone that there's real, like, concrete connections. So I've over the last 5 years come to feel like, wow, this is some kind of a universal model. But I've had to laugh at myself about it too, because some people might say, wow, that's a very narcissistic viewpoint of the world. It's completely self-centered, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a very practical one from a standpoint of organizing your software and organizing your data, because essentially what you're going to want to do when you expose data to your end users is you want to allow them to explore a lot of data that's directly relevant to something that they're looking at, and maybe one degree away from it. And then the next links that they click on will bring up a new one core item plus a degree away from it, etc. So by using that bullseye model, it's actually and implementing it within the database, it's actually possible to do efficient queries that bring up a core data item plus things that are 1 degree away from it, as a single query. And so you're actually sort of instantiating in the data model itself the types of queries that you're going to want to be able to accomplish efficiently. So I've listed a couple of different areas in which this is relevant. We're going to look at product communities and organizational structure. We talked about a little bit just before, but I thought this is kind of interesting because this is a chart that Ross Mayfield from Social Text put together, and he came up with it in about 2006, and it's approximately what we were discovering at IMEM at around the same time. That basically, different users are going to have different levels of engagement, and what you're going to find is that they're people who are very active and are, who are just, leading all the activity. And Ross put that all the way to the right. And there are people who are very passive, and all they'll do maybe is, read a blog post or even read a summary of a blog post. And from those two extremes, there's a whole range of activity in between. And basically, if you build your service around this notion that there's, an entire community that you can support through the service that you're providing, and if you build the right types of features that sort of encourage people to move up the engagement curve, you actually are creating the best mechanism for growing the service, because it's really in growing the activity in the core. I think I mentioned this with respect to the various data sets that we're going to deal with. So if you increase activity up here by getting more people involved in the core of a service, you'll sort of naturally bring more activity in at the lower end of engagement. So anyway, I thought this was a really useful thing to bring up, and it appears to really be pretty universal throughout these large social networks and basically social media community-oriented services. You can absolutely look at an individual blog as being something, as having a curve that's associated with this. Cool. Okay. So one thing that graph didn't really mention very precisely or specifically was that as an engineer, as a developer, as a founder, you're actually part of the community as well. And if you're doing your product the right way in a consumer environment, you're probably actually interested in what that service can do for you as an individual. So a lot of coders start writing code because it solves a personal problem. So to me, it's really interesting to look at the users of a service also from the perspective of the people developing it. And if you include yourself in this list, it really becomes a lot easier to start identifying with all of these different levels of engagement and activity. And it makes it a lot easier to understand, where people are coming from when you get comments back from your end users. It becomes a lot easier to sympathize with them, a lot easier to, fix their bugs quickly, etc. So just recognizing that the engineers are part of the community has a really profound effect on how well you can actually respond to the whole community's requests. So I'm kind of blowing through these slides pretty fast. But I actually wanted to take a step back and not look just at what's going on right now in the web space, but just sort of think from a historical perspective about where it used to be cool to work. And I think the USPS and Amtrak are not considered like awesome, cool places to work at anymore. But once upon a time, they were emblematic of everything that was fast and new and cool. Telegraphs came out, and messages could be sent very quickly. You could move from one side of the country really fast. So there were a lot of really bright people who got involved in in businesses like that.